It is a special honor to be invited to say a few words for this Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. 2021 marks the 26th anniversary of this official day of service in humble recognition of the civil rights champion, this undaunted advocate for equity. I've made a few speeches over the past years, and honestly, I have to tell you, this has been a particularly hard one to write. Not for lack of context or content these days, I must say. More like too much. It's just too much. Not just my own small list of grievances against racism and its oppressive kin. It's too much for so many more who face so much more and who deserve to be the subjects of our loving attention. So many who face so much more of the kinds of oppression that we say that we disdain. Too much. Not in a way that makes me give up. Too much in a way that makes me what you may see as an angry black man, a person who stops their daily norm and protests, a black person shouting, "I object," a fed up person who joins others who yell enough, part of a community that knows exactly what Maya Angelou meant when she said, "We may encounter many defeats, but we must never be defeated." Never defeated. I found these days that a reckoning is a team sport. I've been learning about the power of our collective voices. I've been leaning on others more than is my general tendency lately. So I will lean on the words of many honored black voices today, on black voices whose words, I think, speak to every one of us. The Reverend Doctor, he stood for the plight of black people, but his message is for everyone. His message is for anyone who's been held down, has not been allowed to be part of America's promise, has been pushed aside, and his message is for anyone who wrestles with their own role in sowing unfairness, by action, by inaction, or happenstance of situation. And let's acknowledge that many straddle both spaces, subjugators and subjugated. This day is not a holiday, not in the way other days are. This is a day of service, to act in ways which reject oppression and reaffirm our co-destiny. A day on, not a day off, as they say. And if you live in King County, then you are particularly bound to this day. With the Reverend Doctor as the county's namesake, we hold a special relationship to this day and to this august person. And with this county's particular honor comes, in my view, a responsibility to be good stewards of his vision. Now, to be most accurate, King County is renamed after the Reverend Doctor. Some of you know that our own civil rights icon and revered former council member, Larry Gossett, is an architect of our county's renaming. The county was originally named after Vice President William King under President Franklin Pierce. This stood for the first 130 or so years of our county until, in an act of recognition and reckoning, it was acknowledged that our county was named after a vice president who was a slave owner. And so we realigned our path with the Reverend Doctor. This became official about 15 years ago, proclaiming that this 12th most populous county in the nation, this county where a quarter of its people were born outside the U.S., this county where some schools have enrollments where 140 or more languages are spoken, this county chooses to join the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s journey to equity. We are in an eerie time right now. We are unsettled and swaying a bit after many intense months, teetering with aches of trauma, angsting with the flickering prospect of hope, noticing brief meteorites of joy amid the background of hardship's dark skies. An unsettled time, but not unfamiliar feelings. In his final speech, 52 years ago now, and less than 24 hours before James Earl Ray assassinated him, Dr. King used these words: "The world is all messed up. The nation is sick. Trouble is in the land." He went on to say that the dark skies reveal for us the opportunity to see the stars more clearly. That darkness was the right time for reflection. In a surprisingly hopeful way, he named a challenging forecast when he said, "We've got some difficult days ahead." And I hear him saying that the difficult path is really the only path to a better world, a better nation, a better county, a better us. Dr. King said, something is happening in the world. The people are rising up. I feel him saying, our past is creating our present, and it is inviting an aspiration for the future. This message, it's both timeless and especially timely, especially right now, because an unsettled moment is a moment unforetold. So anything's possible. Which makes 2021 a really special time for reflection on this day that honors the Reverend Doctor. Trouble is in the land, but somehow in a hopeful way, something is happening. Something is happening. A reckoning is at hand. Are we ready to act? Are we ready? Are we willing to be part of the movement that creates a new unity? It would require that we own our role in drawing up the plans for tomorrow. Terry McMillan wrote, "Can nothing make your life work if you ain't the architect?" Are we ready to make visible our values, be the architects? I think we need to start with reflection. Heed the Reverend Doctor and use dark skies to see the stars better. The past year has brought us some remarkable lessons, astronomical challenges, and lessons coming from many directions. Lessons about the many facets of a global hardship, lessons about confronting our country's racism, lessons about adjusting, compromising, desocializing, and yet remaining connected. Lessons about gaping national divides, lessons born out of deferred and diminished celebrations, lessons in contradictions, like making disposable the workers we name essential. We've discovered that we're able to mobilize and protest and march and occupy. We've discovered that our shared sense of truth and humaneness can be eroded by our nation's highest offices. We now know just how fragile our democracy really is. We know now that we are able to adjust beyond our own expectations and redefine our joys. We have reintroduced a racial reckoning, which has sunrised the prospect of meaningful change, the prospect of dismantling the vehicles of hate and oppression. So this is undeniably a special year for a Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. You might sense in me some awkward vulnerability today. Such is the raw closeness and the rough, unpolished relationship that I have with this reckoning. But I've learned, or relearned, or something, just how amazingly people can show up and step up for each other. Despite their own hardships, people reach out with unambiguous support, asking one simple question: how can I help? Such is your spirit of humanity, especially when maybe trouble is in the land. I've learned about the power of loving relationships and the struggle against racism, and it makes me dare to think our power to transform society is greater than even we imagine. Unlike the US president of the past 4 years, we know how to open our eyes to our past. We know that we must know our real history. We know that we can't defend the eponymous monuments to racism that have dotted this country, including this state. Eyes open. This is how we teach our children, how we invite our youth to design, sculpt, and realize peace and justice, how we form a more perfect union. This is our work to do. We each own it. We each hold accountability for it. We've seen it as our responsibility and the product of our labor, or else it will never truly happen. Our county chose to draw the connection between each of us and the Reverend Doctor. That is an act of beautiful disruption, an expression of audacious power, a reminder to each of us, especially our youth, of our collective power. Knowing our power is what the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. helped people realize. Power in the 1950s and 60s in stoic defiance of the gnashing bite of dogs, the shredding pulse of fire hoses, the pummeling thud of police clubs, the oppressing privileged seats of political position. Power of the people, dauntless despite the extinguishing force of the bomb in the church, despite the rope dangling from the branch, despite the crosshairs of the assassin's rifle. Power despite the attempted erasure by incarceration, by community displacement. Power in the repudiation of barriers to education and voting and healthcare and opportunity. In this county, right now, we can't give up our power. Alice Walker said, "The most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any." We possess a potency, a power that can overcome even our own skepticism. We have the power to overcome a bad circumstance, a bad policy, and yes, a bad president. I've had the great honor of working in a place that remembers the power of our community, that asserts the power of people to be the architects of spaces where they are beloved, know belonging, and experience unquestioned dignity. The Odessa Brown Children's Clinic traces its roots to the efforts of individuals in this county's Black community. The clinic is named for a Black woman, was brought to life by women, has been guided for 50 years mostly by women. It is the strength of women that author, construct, lift up, and hold communities together. Judith Jamison, dancer, choreographer, and leader of the Alvin Ailey Dance Theater, said, "Women are blessed with a jewel of strength that glows all the time. This strength, this glow must continue to light our path, reveal to our brains what our souls know, catalyze our continuing growth, guide us like Tubman. This is the year to know and draw upon our re-understanding of our past, near past as well as remote past. This is the year we examine and act on James Baldwin's words when he said, 'History is not the past, it is the present. We are our history.' Even the hardest of years, the hardest past, like 2020, are part of us now. And as part of us, we're offered the potential to be better. It would be tempting. It'd be tempting to enter this year wishing to sigh with relief and try somehow to close the door on last year, never to speak of it again. It would be tempting to say, thank goodness that year is over, as if to close a book. And I'll probably disappoint you a little to say that we must not pretend to put 2020 behind us, never to speak of it again. It will probably disappoint you a little in your exhaustion to say that 2021 has to be a year with the hard work of recovery and advancement and the discovery of renewal and joy. This is the year to live into the spirit of our county's name and its namesake, to reflect on the past and ask important questions, to re-examine the status quo before last March and ask ourselves, do we really want to go back to what we called normal? Should we really try to go back to what we called normal? Should our architecture rebuild the same normal that allowed for the inhumanity of separating families at our borders, the normal of displacing historic communities, the normal of criminalizing homelessness and mental health conditions and Blackness, the normal of undoing environmental protections and tearing up international treaties, the normal of using claims of injustice to justify injustice. Let me say that again, using claims of injustice to justify injustice. For the word injustice, you could insert words like fake news, election fraud, violence, discrimination, etc. For example, using claims of election fraud to justify election fraud. I've seen this strategy. I've seen it used locally around me as well as by that tyrannous president. Normal has not been kind to the journey of equity. We must keep urging ourselves forward. We must know we are our past, but we must not seek to climb back into that past place. We have to draw even further on our power, continue to hold the architect's pen. We've not crossed some magical finish line on a New Year's Eve or after a nation's election's inauguration. Just as Civil War and Emancipation Proclamations and constitutional amendments did not end the subjugation of one people by another people. In 1871, on the heels of the Civil War, author Pauline Hopkins wrote this passage in her poem. "The foe you foiled upon the field has only changed its base. New dangers crowd around you and stare you in the face." I think her words are as true today as they were in that war's aftermath. Do not let either fatigue or a false sense of closure make us poor guardians of the scant justice we are working so hard to win back, let alone the greater justice we ultimately seek. We have made many sacrifices in the past many months, but this year must be a call to greater action, or else all our sacrifices will be rendered meaningless, will be made mute. This is the whole purpose of MLK Day, as a day of service rather than a holiday of idleness. Through it all, knowing our shining strength is still here, our power is still here, our glowing souls are still here irrevocably. Even as we reflect that suffering has spread wide but not evenly. In 2020, the world's 500 richest increased their combined wealth by an ungraspable $1.5 trillion. This is the fruit of oppression. Ida Wells, born just 6 months before the Emancipation Proclamation, described enslavement's goal to, quote, dwarf the soul and preserve the body. Today, as before, both dwarfing the soul and preserving the body are necessary to perpetuate injustice and oppression. We still wear down the spirit of aspiration for some, as we ask them to carry on the physical and essential roles that keeps others in comfort. Oppression has more subtle faces than overt ones these days. BIPOC are set against BIPOC to distract us from greater justice. Progress is undermined by even those who toil in equity's work. We settle for marking progress with talk of eliminating gaps compared to whites, rather than hearing BIPOC communities name and reach their own definitions of progress. We build bodies of work, offices, committees, positions, all with the word equity somewhere in them. But we don't invest them with the soul, the strength, the power to hold organizational leaders truly accountable. We allow ourselves to be sidelined from accountability ourselves. We talk ourselves out of our power to hold institutions responsible. We wait. We wait for someone else to do the work of lifting up peace and justice. We wait. We wait for someone to draft the blueprints of equity. We wait for someone else to construct beloved communities. We wait. We wait, each of us, good people with good intentions. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was teaching us about this very thing as he sat in a jail cell in Birmingham in 1963 composing a letter. He knew that, despite being good people, we can allow rules to be constructed, rules like policies and organizational structures and laws themselves that are actually harmful. He knew that, in his words, groups tend to be more immoral than individuals. We all know this too. We all know of good individuals who work within immoral organizations. He knew that injustice thrives in law in many ways, unless we are stewards of peace and justice. He said, there are just laws and there are unjust laws. And he continued, there are just laws that are unjust in their application. The Reverend Doctor knew that clarity, transparency, and awareness are strong antidotes to injustice. And so we each have an obligation to see and understand how our systems work. He said, shallow understanding from those of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute understanding from those of ill will. We all know this. We know this too. We know how much more harmful the silence of good people is than the yelling of hateful people. He admonished us against the passivity of what he called the moderate. He said that the moderate is more devoted to order than to justice. He continued that the moderate asks justice to wait for a more convenient time. We all know this too. We know of complacency, our fear of disruption, our fear of loss of comfort, of position, of our power. We ask each other to just wait for a while longer, be more appeasing, be more patient. Meanwhile, our county's black communities are worse off in some ways than when the Reverend Doctor was writing his letter from a jail cell in Birmingham in the 1960s. And I say it's too much. We cannot wait, not for one more path deferred, not for one more opportunity lost, not for one more life extinguished. I know we're tired. After the devastation of these past 10 months, we understand what author Chinua Achebe meant when he said, "When suffering knocks at your door and you say there is no seat for him, he tells you not to worry because he has brought his own stool." I know we face a hard climb, yet I wonder how our sense of struggle compares to others' hardships, the climb that others have endured. It reminds me of Langston Hughes' poem, Mother to Son, where he writes, "Well, son, I'll tell you, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It's had tacks in it and splinters and boards torn up, but all the while I've been a climbing on. So boy, don't you turn back. Don't you set down on the steps because you find it kind of hard. Don't you fall now, for I'm still going, honey. I'm still climbing." We have communities, like our Black and brown communities in this country, who have been obliged to live in constant trauma for generations upon generations. We have communities, rural and urban, migrant, neurodiverse, gender and sexuality diverse, ability diverse, who face the constant threat of the bite of injustice, that have had to, in the words of Ralph Ellison, the author of Invisible Man, live with your head in the lion's mouth. Yet our BIPOC communities and many more in King County and beyond have managed, despite incalculable hardship, to, in the Reverend Doctor's words, carve a tunnel of hope through a vast mountain of disappointment. What strength can we muster when we see this undaunted hopefulness around us, this inextinguishable expectation of something better? I think about a reference from one of our greatest contemporary voices on trauma and healing, Dr. Sean Ginwright. He mentioned a statement from a young person in one of his youth group listening sessions. The unnamed young Black man said, "I am more than the worst thing that ever happened to me. I am more than my trauma." How do we compare our struggle to his? How do we sit back in fatigue as he steps forward into hope? I think we owe every bit of our untapped energy for young people like him and for the future that we hope to see. I think we owe our future a true reckoning with our past. I think we need to dedicate ourselves to rethinking our choices, our decisions as a society. We need to be part of the beautiful disruption and usher in the dazzling potential all around us. We need to reject the ugliness of our past and present, ugliness that says, complicitly, that it's okay to erase a person's future with a bullet or with a chokehold or with a prison cell. We need to reject the foundations of disenfranchisement and each stone that unjustly rests upon those unjust foundations. County Executive Dow Constantine's commitment to end youth incarceration in this county is more than an end to something unjust and wicked, but also the beginning of the construction of steady, safe, and stable stairs to a thriving future for youth who used to be criminalized. We, the namesake inheritors of Dr. King's message, are also inheritors of his fervent call to shrug off our sense of complacency or inconvenience or complicity or even weariness and see this struggle for what it is, a choice. A choice, equity's journey or perpetual erasure. A choice, transformation or status quo, a choice, life or death. We are inheritors of his fervent exhortation for each of us to answer the call, a call to rise from our slumber and say enough, no more. I say enough, no more. Dr. King declared that there is trouble in the land, not simply to name a current state, but to call for a reckoning. King County's declaration that racism is a public health emergency must be also a call for a reckoning. We have promises to keep to BIPOC communities and all people who have felt the sting of erasure and oppression. We have promises to keep to Black communities to do what local leader and mentor Sakara Ramu says when she calls on systems to deinstitutionalize our bodies and institutionalize our power. I believe in King County, even with its imperfections and struggles. I believe in the promise Larry Gossett and others invited us to embrace. I believe in King County because I believe in you. I believe that you seek King County to be a place that nourishes and strengthens love. And in doing so, lovingly nourishes and strengthens all of us. Nourishes and strengthens every identity, everyone, every family, every community. I believe we aspire to Booker T. Washington's words when he said, "Great people cultivate love while small people cultivate hate." We are this county, and we will do all we need to do so that our beloved communities will shine. I know that we will not wait for a more convenient time for justice. We are this county. We are King County. We are humanity. You will not allow hardship to define you, paralyze you, or erase you, because you are both loving and beloved. This reckoning is our reckoning and our opportunity to live up to what we see in our children's eyes. Children who have shown the individual Ruby Bridges fortitude to cross a threshold and shatter a statue to pieces. Children who collectively carried the banners and led the MLK March, and as we follow them, their lead reconstructs us. We know that the most ardent struggle for justice creates the most dazzling and beautiful result. You're powerful. You have the shattering and repairing power to overcome hate's deeds, hate's policies, and even hate's words. This is why I end with the timely words of Derek Walcott, playwright and poet. Break a vase, and the love that reassembles its fragments is stronger than the love that took its symmetry for granted when it was whole.